computers, not for me. Let's go and become a pilot. I came to the UK when I was about 20. I went to college, I did A-levels, and then I decided to do computer science because at the time was the thing to do. Where we still had the old Amstrads, the black and white screens. So I go into university, and just before that, in the summer, through some people I met, a friend, I was working as a barman basically in other weekends in London. I met this guy that used to do freight, flying for National Airways, flying King Airs out of Southend. We started chatting. It took me flying a couple of times with him on the right-hand seat. I remember positioning a Piper Navajo once from Luton to Oxford, and I had my first little go. And then I got the bag and decided, short computers, not for me. Let's go and become a pilot. The challenge at the time, of course, is to be able to get the money together. At the time, I guess was about 50 to 60,000 to do the full-time course in Oxford. I didn't have that kind of money. My parents helped me. And I ended up doing probably over 5 years from start to finish when I got my license. I did it the long route, which it doesn't exist anymore, where I went and got my PPL, I got my instrument, the IMC rating, got my night rating. Then I became a flying instructor after I think I accumulated about 150 flying hours. And then I worked as a flying instructor for 2 years. I built my hours up to about 800, which was the minimum at the time. And then I went back to Oxford and I did the ground school and the flying. So it was a long route. That's why it took me 5 years, but it was a lot cheaper than having to find 60,000 those days. And that was it. I became a pilot. I had no interest in airline flying. I always wanted to do something different. My initial idea is to go to Africa and do some humanitarian work, flying caravans and King Airs. Unfortunately, I never did it for one reason or the other. I think probably because by that time I got my first flat and I got mortgage, so I couldn't really go. And my first job was flying a Citation 2 out of Stansted on a part-time basis for a wealthy individual. They didn't last very long because he sold the aircraft soon after. And I continued flying instructing at Stableford. And the guy that owned the airfield and owned the flying club one day said, look, we need to get an AOC because I was offered this contract with the London radio station, LBC, the London Lookout, to fly 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, just spot the traffic around London. So we got the AOC, it was his company. We started SFC Air Taxis those days, and then we did that for a couple of years. By that time, I wanted to do a bit more than the 2 hours morning to evenings. And we go into the horse racing world. By default, someone I knew said, listen, jockeys and trainers need to fly around from racecourse to racecourse during the summer period. You got the Piper Seneca. Why don't you do it? So I started doing all the flights up to Newmarket every day, more or less, pick up a lot of little people, fly them around the country back in the evening. Then we start doing some other non-racing work, but very, very little, because all we had was one Seneca, and then we got a second Seneca. At some point, I've decided, it was myself and my ex-wife at the time. She was working in ops, doing all the flight planning, and I was flying and doing all the AOC regulatory stuff. We decided, look, we need to do this for ourselves. So we got a business plan together and they tried to raise the money. That's when we met Patrick, which was our business partner for over 20 years. And we got it together and started London Executive Aviation in 1995. So we took over effectively the business of the old taxi company that we're working for. We remain as Stagleford, and then we expanded from there. We got our first Piper Navajo, our first King Air, our first Citation 2, and that went on for about 20 years until we decided it's a good time to sell to Lux Aviation, but remain involved with the company. So that's it. You have to have a passion for aviation. And I see a lot of the people we employ, especially our pilots, they love aeroplanes. I have to say, I'm the odd one out. I had no bag for aeroplanes. I had no connection with aviation. I wasn't one of those kids that will sit there looking at the sky, look at aeroplanes flying and say, one day I want to be up there. No, I just fell into it completely by default. But I loved it. And then the passion started building up, and then I started liking the business element and the flying, of course, because I flew for probably about 15 years before I stopped. I don't fly anymore, but whenever I go flying with a friend or jump on one of our aircraft, I still think this is beautiful, this is wonderful. So really, when you say what we want people to have, I mean, like in any business, you need to be hardworking, you need to want to succeed, and you need to be able to work hard. It's not easy business, but it's enjoyable business. And I think even after, well, been 30 years now since I started, I still love the business. There's no day I come to the office and say, oh, I have to drag myself in the office now, because there's always something new. There's always something else is happening. And I think anything to do with airplanes and travel is happy business. You go to airports, except when you got delays and Ryanair cancels flights, but everyone is happy, isn't it? Everyone, because they're going on holiday, they're going somewhere. They might go for business or holiday, but overall, people are happy. So I think the service we offer is not just a necessity. It's not something that people have to buy. You know, I can't think of so many examples that people buy because they have to. It's something that people use it to go on holiday. So it's the beginning of a good time. And it's interesting about the different people that you meet in our business. Again, we're not an airline, so most of our clients, they will have certain wealth, but it's not about the money. Is that they're interesting people, and when you get to know them, and sometimes you do get to know them, and not just me, but our key account managers, our engineers maybe, or our camo people, because there will be times that they will talk to these wealthy individuals, and they say, right, we've got a problem with the aircraft. So you get to know this people, and I think that is the interesting part. That's what I found. And I still find it interesting to get to know people, see how they started, how they became successful, how they live their lives. I mean, I was talking to one of our very old customers, which we have sort of personal relationship as well, and he's 83. And I said, oh, you're a billionaire already by what I read about you. Why do you get up in the morning and go to the office? I mean, this guy actually flies every second Saturday, going around the UK inspecting his businesses. And I said, well, why at the age of 83? And he said, well, I always thought about this. He said, first of all, because I always worked all my life and I worked really hard. So if I stop now, I think I'm going to drop dead. But putting that aside, he said, I get up in the morning and I still remember the council flat in East London that I grew up. And I never want to go back and live in there. I said, I had a great time, don't take me wrong. He said, I built my character, but I don't want to go and live in a room with 5 of us in the cold. He says, yeah, but you already have 1 billion. You can't spend, you will never go back to that flat. And he said, it doesn't matter. My instinct is I need to go to work, because if I don't, I might go back to where I started. And that's one of them. You know, there's other people, you hear all different stories. And that makes it interesting for me. Really, really interesting. Get to know people. Sorry, very long-winded answer. But
no, it's great, George.
I find interesting in our business. But I think most people, I would say, they have to have some interest in aviation, or at least taste it and get a passion. Because if you don't, you're probably going to drift off over the years to other industries that are maybe better pay, easier, sometimes more sociable hours. I think, you know, yourself, from the people you meet, anyone in our business love the business. It's not.
Yeah, and it's not, for me, one thing I've noticed is you can, you know, what I do, you can work really hard for days on end, but then you'll find yourself somewhere lovely in the world that I would never have expected. To visited half the destinations I've been to, have met half the people I meet, to, you know, and I was never someone who was going to be around private jets. That was never ever part of where I've grown up from, and I wouldn't swap this industry for anything, and the career that I've had and I'm having. Could you walk me through, say, if you're dispatching a flight out, what kind of people would be in your team around, and what kind of things might they be doing if you're seeing a customer off on one of these holiday journeys? Who would have to be at the airfields? I think most people don't ever see beyond the fact you'll need a pilot and a flight attendant or two pilots, but they don't know all of the rest of the people who have to be involved to get an aircraft airborne.
Well, it's probably what's best then, if I tell you quickly, was the process from start to finish. We are structured here. So first of all, a call, an email, or an Avinode will come in. We have the commercial team, which they will take the inquiry, and providing we have availability, we check the board. It's all done electronically. On our software, they will check the availability, and they will give quote. They will give a quote out to the client. Now, to put into perspective, in the UK part of our business, we do an awful lot of quotes. In the summer, we have hit 1,000 quotes a day. So that's and that's not done. That's done manually. When I say manually, someone has to look at it, process it, put it in the system or adjust the system, and then a quote will go out to the client. So that's an awful lot of quotes. Now, because of how the industry works, a very small percentage of that will convert. Could be 1%. But that's how the industry works. There's an awful lot of quotes. Sometimes the same client going to different brokers, and all the brokers will come to us. So anyway, so the quote will be, all those quotes will be given. Eventually, the customer will come back and say, yes, I have an interest on this flight, please, at this price. Some negotiation, some people say, can you knock £500 off or whatever. Once they saw the interest and they want to confirm the flight, then the commercial team has to go to the aircraft owner. If the particular aircraft is chartered under owner's release, sometimes it's not because we own it, or because the owner says take the bookings. You get owner's release, providing the owner says gives the go ahead. We go back to the client. We issue the contract, a charter contract. They will sign it. Will come back. And that's what will kick off all the rest of the processes. First of all, the financial side, so accounts will be notified. Has it got credit, or has it need, so does it need an invoice to pay? A lot of our clients have credit, so we invoice them after the flight. Then the flight moves from there to the customer care team, to the operations through customer care, which they sit side by side, and someone will be allocated that flight. And they will start putting all the details in the system, crewing the flight, arranging the catering, any special requirements, and so on, before it goes to a dispatch team. Now, the dispatch team is centralized in Romania, so it's not in the UK anymore, except some exceptional flights like the royal flights, the government flights we do, they all have to be dispatched in this office, so we have one person that will deal with that. But everything else, it will be electronically go to Romania, and Romania then will deal with the overflight clearances, permits, any visa requirements or COVID entry requirements that we had, and do the feasibility where they will flight plan, they do the initial flight plan. Can the flight be done with the amount of passengers, with the predicted winds? And then again, that's all done in our system. We can see what the other team has booked. There's red flags, yellow flags, green flags that something has been confirmed. There's constant communication with the client, and that is done by the customer care team. So do they need to change the flight, or specific catering they want? Do they need any ground transport, and so on? And eventually then we come to the day, to a few hours or a day before the flight, where the actual flight plan will be produced, filed with air traffic, crew will be given all their briefs electronically. Again, we use electronic flight bags. So I just need to put the charts. So the crew electronically will get all that from dispatch, weather, note times, all the information in a pack. They turn up at the airport usually 1.5 hours before the flight to prepare the aircraft. At that point, we may have a person at the airport to see the client off. That doesn't happen very often. It happens either when we have a new client, a client we haven't seen personally for a while, or there's might be a very demanding flight, some special requirements. So then again, a person from commercial or operations team would turn up at Luton to see the client, greet them, make sure our handling agent does a good job, and see them off, basically. Then the last bit is when the flight is taxiing out, when it's taking off, there will be messages sent to the PA, or if anyone is meeting the client at the other end, to say the aircraft is taxiing, the aircraft is taking off, your ETA is so and so. And the final is after the flight, someone will call the client or WhatsApp and say, was everything okay? And we take any comments, obviously, and analyze them if there were any issues. So that's the whole process from start to finish.
Which anyone listening can hear, that is a very complex process. And although obviously operationally you've got it down to a fine art, there are a lot of people involved in that process. So there are many different roles that anyone coming into the industry could participate anywhere along that chain. And some of them, like you haven't had this aviation, you did your 5 years of pilot training, and I'm guessing you've done a lot of business training as well to build the business, but you didn't come into it, you came into it with a computer science qualification. That's what you were doing. you know, I came into this industry with an English and French degree. There's nothing there that I had a comedy club, you know, there's nothing that has been to do with planes, aviation, flying.
No, this is the majority of our people. If I just think of the background of the people, I mean, I have people here that have been here since the beginning, 25 years. And I'm trying to think where they came from. I think Martin, he used to work in the city, was a stockbroker, had enough, walked out. He became a farmer, and then suddenly came in, and today he's our chief operation officer. I had pilots. I had one pilot, actually, that was a car mechanic, used to fix our cars at Stableford. And one day he said, so that I've got some money, I'm going to become a pilot. Became a pilot. So yeah, it's all different backgrounds. Very, very few people, I think, start with wanting to be in aviation early days.
Mm-hmm. So
you later.
Yes. Definitely. And I think one of the things to get you really interested in aviation is come to an airfield, come and, you know, be and see what happens actually at an airfield, because that's the point for me when I started to actually be around aircraft, that it suddenly got very different, you know, and when I actually got flights and all the rest of it. But just seeing what happens, it's not like looking out onto the runway at Heathrow waiting to take off with one of the airlines, with BA. An operation like yours, you know, it's very, very different, very hands-on. If you're recruiting a young person, then what are the particular skills or character attributes that you would look for someone who you would identify as being potentially a great team member?
Important, be able to work under pressure, because it gets busy. It gets really busy, and it gets very. I said there's problems because it's a forever changing scenario here. It could be weather, it could be technical issues, it could be demanding customers shouting to you on the other side of the phone. So you need to be able to work under pressure. People that have started with us and failed, they're the people that can only do one thing at a time. You need to be able to multitask here. You need to be able to start organizing a flight and just put it aside because you've got one or two or three other problems going on that are more urgent. So that's an essential. Be flexible with your time. It's not a 9-to-5 job. Again, people that come in with this attitude, they want to go home at 5:30, not going to survive. This, you go home when the job is done. Yes, we have rosters, of course, we have shift patterns, and that's the other thing. When you are in aviation, some of them, all of them, you'll be required to work on a shift, which the standard airline shift is 12 hours, 4 days a week, 4 days and 4 days off. So 4 on, 4 off. So that is what our customer care people do, our dispatch people do. Commercial, not so much. Commercial will work extended hours, so there will be a mini shift from probably 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Flying, absolutely. If you're going to come into the executive aviation, you need to be flexible. Yes, we have rosters. We moved on from the old days where you're available 24/7. But there still is very changeable scenario here. So you need to be able to go away on a Monday with a plan to come back on a Wednesday, but be able to come back on Thursday if it's required.
And I think that might sound a little bit daunting to some people. And I know from my area of the industry, which is a lot of the work I did was doing magazines at trade shows, which are ridiculously long hours. what I did come out of that with those lifelong friends, great, the team bonding when you're all working on something and you manage, despite everything, to make it a success for the end user or the client. I think the camaraderie for me, there's no atmosphere or energy like it that I've seen anywhere else. I don't know if that's true in your office and your environment, George.
Very true, very true. And when it's busy here, is fantastic environment. People like the shouting, the banter. It's a bit like the old days in the stock markets.
Yeah,
you know, that's what makes the industry.
Yeah,
yeah, they are long hours, but again, we have safety guidelines, we have risk assessments, so we don't, you know, you're not going to come into the industry expected to work a 24-hour shift. But what I'm saying at the same time is not a 9 to 5. You need to have that flexibility. But I think more importantly, you need to be able to multitask and work under pressure. And be prepared to learn, to listen.
And that's so valuable advice. Thank you, George.